How do we reach hearts and minds to go from people feeling like NIMBY to people feeling like YIMBY? Yes, in my backyard. So we have a great panel to discuss this, people with a lot of experience, and Seth McKee is here to moderate from Scenic Hudson.
Thank you for having us be the last panel today. Hope your energy level is good. We have one more panel here. All right. So I'm Seth McKee. I'm the executive director of the Scenic Hudson Land Trust, part of Scenic Hudson. And just really thank you to Kara and to Mohawk Consultations for bringing us all together. I have a feeling this could be very groundbreaking. Thank you to Steve and Rebecca for launching the Hudson Valley Affordable Housing Conservation Strategy. I just want to say a couple of words before I introduce the panelists about Scenic Hudson's journey here. We were formed in the 1960s to empower communities to express concerns about development proposals, right? The Battle of Storm King Mountain, which set precedents that created the National Environmental Policy Act, which eventually led to the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and in New York, SECR in 1975. These are all powerful tools that have benefited our environment and quality of life. And we've gone on to conserve over 50,000 acres of important lands, 130 farms. We've created or expanded 65 parks and nature preserves. We're now working in our urban centers, our river cities of Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, and Kingston. And we've advocated for groundbreaking environmental policies, the Bond Act, the Environmental Protection Fund, the Federal Farm Bill, local community preservation acts such as Red Hook. Robert McKee talked about that. And we're going to continue on all those fronts and to safeguard and utilize these tools. But our housing crisis requires both new tools and a new outlook on what development means and how it should be encouraged and shaped. And so at Scenic Hudson, we realized that we really have to look holistically at how we create a sustainable Hudson Valley where critical lands are conserved, and that is an inclusive home to an economically and racially diverse community. So when Steve Rosenberg asked if we would be part of the new Hudson Valley Affordable Housing Conservation Strategy, we of course said yes. That led directly to the collaborative Red Hook project with Robert McKee and the Dutchess Land Conservancy and RUPCO. So there's a continuum here, there's a through line. In case you're wondering why is one of the regional environmental groups up here talking about affordable housing. And we're looking at it holistically in this way because, as someone said earlier, land is the common denominator. So we have a privilege of hearing from a panel of really stellar Hudson Valley leaders. They're thought leaders, they're implementers of good work, they all have battle scars, and we're here to talk about getting from NIMBY to YIMBY. We have a town supervisor, a not-for-profit affordable housing CEO, and a for-profit affordable housing developer. So we're going to start with Kevin O'Connor, the president of RUPCO. And as before, everyone's going to take like 5 minutes to talk about their work in this area, and then we'll pose some questions. So,
okay. Thanks, Seth. Good afternoon. I'd like to echo the thank you to Kara and the Mohawk Consultants for putting this on, and really to Steve and Rebecca for your remarkable leadership in putting this construct together. And congratulations on today, and for everyone that's here to talk about this. You know, this is a great day. It's great. It provides a lot of optimism. My experience, though, is this. I've been coming to these meetings for 35 years. Rooms filled with well-meaning, well-intentioned folks, mostly white, all well-housed. We're going to go home, and we're all well-housed. And it's been very difficult. It's not easy. If it was easy, we'd have more of it. And so I have to say that. At RUPCO, our approach, our mission is to create homes, support people, and improve communities. Our vision is for strong, vibrant, and inclusive communities with a home and opportunity for everyone. We do this the wrong way. We don't do anything else like we do housing. So parochial, town by town by town by town. We don't do economic development, we don't do healthcare, we don't do food, we don't do the environment, we don't look at our commuting patterns to work, transportation, none of it do we do town by town by town. It's so redundant. And you would think that the issues are different. There's a little bit of difference. And sure, there's suburban, there's rural, there's urban, but the issues of housing and affordability and accessibility and energy efficient and climate resilient, all of these things, if we could just do things on a more regional basis. There was a guy from Europe that came here about 15 years ago, and he said, you guys are, you kid around. You talk about the environment, but you don't do science. In Europe, we do science. We have scientists, we study, we do scientific. You've got a bunch of volunteers serving on boards that you don't take a real approach to doing the environmental work that needs to be done. And then we do it so redundantly. So, having said that, one of my first endeavors, I just want to talk briefly about two things, a little bit of the experience in Woodstock and now our new experience in the town of Red Hook. And in between there's a whole lot of stuff, but Woodstock, I got a call in 2003 when RUPCO come to Woodstock to do some affordable housing. They've been trying for the better part of 3 decades, couldn't get it done. And I was very naive. I just come from working in Poughkeepsie and Hudson River Housing, and 10 years later we cut the ribbon. But in Woodstock, they just finished a comprehensive plan. They said, let's put the development in the core of the village. And it never got passed because some people didn't agree with that idea. And we had a 28-acre site. We clustered 53 units on 7 acres that had water and sewer. It was zoned for over 200 units. And we spent 5 years in front of the planning board. The environmental scrutiny on 53 units clustered on 7 acres, that kind of density. Well, meanwhile, in towns like Woodstock and many other towns, you have 5 and 10 acre zoning, and we just cut the environment by 1,000 small cuts under almost no environmental review whatsoever. So if we're going to do this, we've got to change some of our processes. I brought a couple slides. I don't know how to get to them.
Right arrow. No? I can do it. Here it is.
Yeah. So,
You're going the other way.
the other way?
Yep. Keep going. No? Next one. One more time. Point towards me. Other way. Other button. More?
Hey, go easier. I'm going to start acting like Mario. I won't use the microphone.
One more. Bingo.
All right. I think a couple things that can help move the dime are courageous public officials and towns that take real progressive action, and of course then there's money. So we had an opportunity to come to Red Hook, which you heard Supervisor McKee talk about the great work that they've done to put some funds together. And so when a 120-acre farm comes available, they're able to step up and purchase it. This has an iconic farmland that's right available just north of the village as you're driving up Route 9. People love that. It reminds me of the iconic views going east out of New Paltz. You leave the village and you have that beautiful farmland that everybody loves and in front of the tower. So because of the coming together with Scenic Hudson and the Land Trust, the Duchess Conservancy to help buy, plus the funds that they had, to preserve the farm and then be able to potentially do some home ownership. We do now have, as you were informed earlier, some subsidies in New York State to do home ownership. We haven't had any subsidies for a long time. And home ownership has always been an important part of the housing continuum. There are so many important parts, but this part of the site was not ever farmed, so it's upland a bit, and we're seeing the opportunity to maybe do 20 single-family homes. We're looking at the potential of using panelized construction, and we're looking at building the panels on site in a temporary situation where we might have some job training in how to build panels, and then hopefully pick up and move to another location. So a low-tech approach to panelized construction that we could then build single-family homes. There's also a barn on the site, right on Route 9, that's abandoned, that could come back as a commercial mixed use. And then there's an opportunity maybe to build 20 rental units right there on Route 9. Again, workforce housing just north of the village. And, often many of our villages, we were invited up to Tannersville a couple years ago because at Hunter Mountain, the mountain recruits people from out of the country to work the mountain. But the Hunter Foundation invited us because Main Street, Tannersville, boutiques, restaurants, retail, they could open up 3 days a week because they didn't have a workforce. So similarly, to be able to create perhaps some workforce housing just north of the village core, we see as a great opportunity. So to be involved with both the town and the village of Red Hook and their leadership, a couple, Scenic, Hudson, Duchess Land Conservancy, and some others, to be able to pull together. I just heard today, Robert, the farmland has been awarded, to an organic farmer, really super. And so it's an example of some collaboration coming together, but it requires some things. It requires, I think the municipalities have a lot of control. This is a home rule state, and I think communities can be extremely progressive or not. And therein lies the rub, because people in every community deserve affordable housing.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we're going to turn to Ken Kearney, the founder and president of the Kearney Group.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. As Kevin said, I'd like to echo, I'd like to thank Kara, and Steve, and Rebecca for all your work and thinking of me. My name is Ken Kearney. I started this business in 1992. It was my second career. I used to be a fireman in South Bronx. Got badly burned in 1988 in the legs, and so I left early. And I started this with a three-family home in Beacon back in 1989 when everybody said, don't go to Beacon, you're out of your mind.
Ken, can you use the other microphone? I think that one's maybe battery low. Just switch with Neil. Or, there we go. Sorry.
How's that? Oh, yeah. All right. So we've developed, or I developed affordable housing mainly in Dutchess County and some in Westchester County. And then in 2010, two things occurred. One, our youngest son said to me, three things. I bought the proverbial house in Florida. I was going down to retire. And he said, you're getting out. I said, I'm done. And he says, teach me how to do one of these things. And that was 22 projects and 1,800 units ago. And so he's really taken the reins, but he's also working with him. He's not just smarter than me, he's more patient and thorough, and it's made me a better developer. At the same time, in 2010, the Westchester County housing settlement came. You probably read about that. There was a dispute against Westchester County. Westchester County settled it with HUD and agreed to build 750 units of affordable housing in areas that really didn't have affordable housing before. And so we were talking to different municipalities about possibilities of how we could create affordable housing. And what happened, the neighboring town where I lived, the town of Somers, had preserved some open space. There was a failed development called the Anglefly subdivision. It was supposed to be 150 units. And it went into foreclosure. The buildings were decrepit, and people didn't want it anymore. They wanted open space. So the town got very creative and got money from a few different sources to preserve open space with the understanding, they got money from Westchester County as well, with the understanding that they would seek to do some affordable housing and other more dense housing in a different part of the town over in the hamlet of Baldwin Place, because there was a sewer line there, right? If you have density, you have to have the infrastructure or a means to get the infrastructure. So we were invited there in 2009, 2010, and we did one project. We worked with Westchester County very closely. They had a sewer line running down Route 6, and they controlled the sewer line. They wouldn't let anybody else really in it. They kind of hugged it. But we were able to work with them and said, hey, the town's working with us, will you work with us? And what that did was a key that opened the lock. because we've gone on now to do 4 projects in the Hamlet Baldwin Place. And we have our 5th project we're actually submitting next week. And we have done a mix of senior housing, workforce housing. We're finishing up a home ownership project, which was 45 townhomes. 8 of those 45 townhomes are going to be sold to people, first-time home buyers at 80% of Westchester median income. What we did is we built it on a grade, so there's a lower level, and there's a 1-bedroom apartment in the basement of these units. So you have home ownership upstairs, and you have a 1-bedroom rental downstairs, and then you have 36, 37 market rate townhomes. But more importantly about Westchester County, what it did is it taught me to start working collaboratively. What we found working with Somers, every time there was a project, it wasn't just the sewer line, there was another ask. The last project we did, Crossroads Baldwin Place, which is where our office is, the town of Somers said, hey, we want to run this sewer line up and down Route 6. We want sidewalks, we want a traffic light, we want people to cross the street here, we want to make it more of a village. And some of the business owners wanted to expand, and they wanted to get in the sewer. So we went to Westchester again, we were able to do that, work with Westchester and work with the town. And then finally the town said, we want a commercial building in the front, 30,000 square foot commercial building. And I said, I don't do commercial. And they said, we don't do rezones. And I said, I love commercial. So we constructed commercial. My son, again, did a great job. We have Green's Natural Market there. We have an upscale coffee shop, and it's really a cool place. But again, what you're hearing today are collaborations. The project that Kevin is working on with Supervisor McKee up in Red Hook, I was up in Red Hook 23 years ago, and we cleaned up a brownfield, and we built a sewer plant in the back. And the mayor at the time said to me, I may want that sewer plant one day. And so I shook his hand, and I said, okay. So after we finished our project, about, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, there was a meeting in the town of Red Hook, and said, what can we do to start the discussion on getting this sewer plant? And it's taken that long. I joke that I never had such a hard time giving something away, but I gave the village, working with the town, the sewer plant in 12 acres. And that sewer plant is going to be expanded, and it's going to be serving Kevin's project. And so you were able to get the preservation of open space, you were able to get the affordable housing with having the infrastructure somewhere. So I guess the point to it is that it's never too early to start thinking about it. If you have, we're working in another community now that just took over a failed sewer plant for a condo development. And they're thinking about expanding that. It needs a lot of work, expanding that. And if we're going to expand it, they brought us in for a meeting a couple weeks ago and said, hey, we would like to do some mixed income, affordable and market rate housing similar to what you did in Somers. And all these discussions didn't happen before the Westchester settlement. It didn't. And Westchester County was able to do it in a way.
I'm sorry, do you mind me asking where that is? I'm curious.
I can't tell you. But in Westchester, the county was the one who instilled in us to go into the municipalities, not with a stick, but rather a carrot. I like to call it carrot sticks, you know, and go in and just kind of, you know that little thing called the settlement. But we were able to do it, and the municipalities were able to meet some of the goals that they were trying to meet, and we were able to build affordable housing. And I think what you're learning here today, it's another tool. You get interest from a municipality if there is a plan in place to preserve open space, and then have that infrastructure in an area town where there is infrastructure or will be infrastructure to make an area that's dense, maybe more denser, and so forth. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. This is a great transition to Neil Bettez, who's third-term supervisor in my town, town of New Paltz. He who I think is the only town supervisor I know who has a PhD in ecology as well. So unique breed, but I think you've heard from the nonprofit housing sector, affordable housing sector, you've heard from the for-profit side, now we have a town supervisor.
Can you hear me? Great. So this is getting from NIMBY to YIMBY, and it's really about changing the mindset from no growth to smart growth. And we've mentioned smart growth a few times today, but I just wanted to go over it and make sure everyone's familiar with it. Smart growth is a type of planning that encourages growth in compact, walkable neighborhoods, complete streets, mixed-use development, which allows for a variety of housing choices instead of sprawl. There are 10 aspects of it. Mixed land use, compact design, range of housing types for families of all life stages, income levels, walkable neighborhoods, a sense of place, so it attracts new residents, preservation of open space. So these go together, they're not opposed to each other. Direct development toward existing communities, variety of transportation choices, predictable, fair cost, development rules, and then stakeholder collaboration. And so this has been around for about 30 years, but it's something that we need to kind of sell to people. And now I just want to go over some of the things that we've done in New Paltz, but how does smart growth differ from traditional development? If you look at your zoning maps, you're going to see R1, R3, 5, 8, 10, sometimes 20. That means you need that acreage to build a single family home. And so when you get these really large lots, you're going to have to buy 20 acres to build a house. You're not going to build a starter home. You're going to build a McMansion and you're going to sell it for hundreds of thousands of dollars. That has an impact on affordability. The reason they have those large lots is because they want to preserve open space. There are better ways to preserve open space. It's also, when you have these big, large lots, it creates sprawl. It's also hard for the towns to plow all those roads, put the infrastructure in. And so it reduces biodiversity, there's environmental impacts. So what has New Paltz done to promote smart growth? The first thing we've done is we changed the zoning in a couple different parts of town. In the village, they changed zoning to add increased density. It's called the NBR district. It's where zero places. And now there are 3 more developments along that same stretch of road. So we're getting a lot more development there. The town did the same thing right at the throwaway exit, what we call the gateway development. We have not had anyone really want to develop much there because we don't have sewer capacity. So that's something I'll talk a little bit about later on. Zero Place is a, it used to be a tire store or mechanics. It was all paved and it was local, it was good. It burned down and now it is, I think, maybe 50 units roughly, but it's net zero. It has geothermal energy and because of the law in the village, 10% of those units are affordable. It doesn't add a lot of affordable housing, but it's beginning to add some. But really what it does is it adds more housing, which is the first step, right? They're rentals. And so the next thing the town has done is and many towns in the county are doing this, we passed an accessory dwelling unit law. And so that is, it used to be that you had to go before the planning board, it was very restricted, you had to live in town for 7 years, you had to own the house. We've kind of reversed that and made it as of right. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to add accessory dwelling units. Now you just go to the building inspector. And what that does is it adds lots of housing very quickly. We did that as our first step, but it's because it's a way to add lots of housing very quickly. You have many developers that have a single developer. And so the third thing that we've done is bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. We're trying to add a shared use path along the densest part of town. And so you may say, well, why does that really help? If you have the regular roads, only about 12% of the people will ride their bikes on those roads. Unless you have very safe places for people to ride, they won't do it. But if you have a safe place, like a shared use path on the side that's protected, 50% of the people will ride. And why is it important to have people ride? Maybe they don't need 2 cars in the family. Maybe they can walk to the local businesses. If people are walking, that money stays local as well. So it also just makes it so people can age in place. So that, it doesn't really fit in with housing, but it fits in with smart growth. The last, and I'm going to talk more about this because it fits in with what we're talking about here, is really about preserving open space and farms. And we're trying to do that with easements, purchase of land, and better zoning. And I want to start out with the better zoning. And so Ted Fink is here, and Emily Svensson. We're working with both of them on creating an overlay zoning for parts of the town, similar to what Warwick has done. And it's similar to like a subdivision where you want to preserve large intact open spaces, and you cluster, it's like cluster developments, but you're doing it for single family homes. So instead of having requiring a large 10 or 15 acre lot to preserve that intact ecosystem, you're letting people develop that property. It's not reducing the amount of development at all, but you're directing them to a place where you're allowed to say, well, maybe the house needs to go here versus here, and that leaves that intact ecosystem in place, which makes it more resilient, and it means you don't need to require large lots. So it's a way of increasing the zoning to make development, but also preservation. The next things we've done are much more traditional, and that's easements and land purchases. And so back in 2006, the town passed a bond and was allowed by the voters under a referendum to borrow up to $2 million. And over the next 10 years, they purchased 2 properties, spent about 32%, but they did a lot, but not as much as we would like to do to meet the state's goal of preserving 30% of the property. So we put an easement on a farm, which lets the farm stay working. And then we also purchased some open space right on the edge of the village, which allows, you want open space near your dense areas so people have access to parks and places to walk. And that was really evident during COVID. People really liked having access to that. And then, but since then, what the town has done has passed a real estate transfer tax, and we did that thanks to Jen Metzger, who was here earlier. She was in the state senate at the time. We wanted to do what Red Hook and the town of Warwick had done, but there was essentially an unofficial stopgap on allowing that. But with Jen Metzger and Jim DeLong, who's also here, who was in the county legislature, they amended the Community Preservation Act to allow towns in Ulster County to do that. And so there was a process with that. We also worked with Ted Fink on that. You had to come up with a preservation plan. Our plan was really based on multiple plans that the town had passed over the last, maybe decade. An open space plan, a farmland preservation plan, things like that. And because all of this plan was based on previous plans, there was a lot of buy-in because we weren't trying to change anything. All we were doing is building on a lot of the work that we had already done. The town passed that, and since then we've collected 1.5% real estate transfer tax on homes that sell above the median. So if you're buying a house for the median home price, which has gone up a lot over the last few years, you don't pay any of the tax. It's just the taxes on the amount above that. And then that money can be used to preserve, open space with easements or purchasing the land if we really need to in some cases. And so everyone thinks New Paltz, oh, you're doing it all, you probably already have all of it preserved. But the state's goal of 30% by 2030, we only have 7%. And we've been working on this for a long time. So it's not something that it happens all by itself. We're getting there, but there's still a lot of work to do. But the way to do it is to work together and get this done for housing and improvements.
Thank you, Neil. So we're going to pivot to the golden question, title of this panel. How do we get from NIMBY to YIMBY when it comes to affordable housing and conservation? So we're going to go down the line. So Kevin, how do we get from NIMBY to YIMBY in your view?
Grab a mic. I think you need the power switch on that. See if you can slide the...
I'm sorry, I missed that comment. What was that? Oh, okay, the mic. Yeah, I think we've heard briefly from 2 businesses today. The farm workers are here, the farmers, are here. Talked about that very important agriculture that's here, and that's been an issue for a while. That I was in Chester about 10 or 12 years ago, so I'm happy to see some movement there. But That's been challenging, but also we heard Mr. Smiley start the day with workforce housing here, and he's been a champion of that for a while. I think the more we can bring the business community out and talk about the need for workforce housing, I think that's important. I'm a believer in the power of stories. I think that's partly why Mr. Kearney has been so successful. He's one of the great storytellers. But stories move people, and data does not. And we saw a lot of good data today, and data is very, very important. Data was part of why we have the CRA in this country that they just redid, and maybe not to any great extent, but so data is important, but stories move people. And there's tremendous story in housing and essentially the lack thereof. And I think those are bringing out the business communities and telling more stories, I think are two ways that might help.
Thank you, Kevin. Ken, getting from NIMBY to YIMBY, sounds like carrots might have something to do with it, huh?
Yeah, it does. I'll go back to my lessons that I learned down in Westchester. In addition to the Westchester housing settlement, with 2008, the Obama administration started, I guess, in 2009. Probably right around the time of 2010, 2011, HUD came out with a map. It was an interactive map, and it showed areas around the country that were not integrated, did not have affordable housing. And this map was not acted upon, but there were discussions that the Westchester settlement was going to be the start of a broader discussion, not just countywide, possibly statewide or nationwide. And what it did was, we had municipalities come up to us, and part of it is like the housing needs assessment that Patterns of Progress does. It's great. They'll put together a housing needs assessment and quantify what the need is for that municipality. And we've had municipalities, we've sat down with them, they go, do these count toward our number? Now, you never heard that before 2010. Does this count toward our number? So there is not a hard number, but there's a soft number that are in people's head, that there's an obligation. And the obligation, legal or otherwise, I think that this messaging has been very constructive. Then you take that opens the door. Then you take that and you go to the municipality, and what are their goals? What are they seeking? Are they seeking that commercial building downtown? Are they seeking land conservation in this part of town? What are they actually seeking? What do they need? And is there something that you can work in collaboration with the town, the county, the state, to meet some of those goals? And I think you do that, you can start to get from, NIMBY to YIMBY. However, and I will say this, and I've been outspoken about it, and I'm my own cautious critic, is that if we get a chance to develop it, you have to own it. You have to nail it. You do. And it's not just developing it. It's not just building it. We have our own construction company. We build what we do, and 98% of the people out there, can do that. But we manage every unit, and it's draining. The day started today, every Monday. It starts with management issues. Not a lot. There weren't a lot. There were a couple little things. An alarm went off, this and that. But you have to own that. And if we can get an opportunity to build, we do a real good job. We have to continue to do a good job in management, because this municipality is going to talk to that municipality, and that municipality is going to talk to that one, as they should. So at the end, after we get through everything, we get this thing, we get the collaboration, we get the buy-in, we meet everybody's goals, we have to do it right, and we have to continue to operate it correctly, so that it's integrated well into the community, and people can point at it and say, I want this in my community. Thanks.
Yeah, so So I think one of the biggest obstacles is infrastructure. After the Clean Water Act was passed, the federal government would fund 75% of the sewer plant costs. Ronald Reagan changed that, made it into loans, and now you can get grants, and yes, there are more grants available, but we're so far behind that if you're writing a grant, you're trying to get a grant to fix things that need to be fixed, not to add new capacity. And so it's going to be hard for us to add new density without, more federal support. The other thing is, I think, to make these successful, you do exactly what Red Hook did. Try to add all aspects of housing, not just one. Let people know that there's going to be housing, open space, maybe some like pet infrastructure. If it's just one of those, people tend to look at a zero-sum game and it's like, oh, well, what's this going to cost me? It's going to affect the value of my home. But if you can get people to step back and look at the bigger picture and say that all of these are related, you're more likely to have success.
Thank you. We have time for about 5 minutes of questions, it looks like. So, questions from the audience. Deborah.
Yeah, so thank you all. This is really tremendous and very inspiring, and we're going to walk away with all kinds of great ideas. We're from Woodstock, and we're in the middle of changing or proposing changes to our zoning law to mandate conservation subdivisions to create more housing options throughout the community. And some of the small but very local opposition has been talking about it'll change our community character forever. Because some parts of town are defined as more environmentally sensitive, but it's Woodstock. There's environmental sensitivity all over town. So in the getting from NIMBY to YIMBY, I'm interested to hear, how do you counter that issue of community character changing our town forever? Maybe these are more extreme views than are possible to address in a conference, but I'm curious, and Kevin, you've been through this in our town, and you've done a great job, and the project is wonderful, what your thoughts are about that.
Did people hear the question?
Yes.
How do we counter the use of community character as a concern to oppose projects? That summarizes. Anybody?
So I think one way is if you're just talking about a single development, someone is always going to be opposed to it and say, oh, this is going to affect everything, the world's going to end, and the sky's going to fall. But if it's based on a set of previous plans, and so this is one of the reasons I mentioned it earlier, the county is starting these programs for housing. And so one of the goals for that is to put housing plans together for each of the towns. And I think if you can then point to, well, we're developing this project because it was part of this plan, it's harder for people to say, oh, don't do this one, because it's part of a plan that everyone kind of agreed upon. I think once you start talking about individual projects, it's very easy for people to point out why this doesn't work or that doesn't work, but it should be part of a bigger plan.
Yeah, this is a tough one, Deborah. I'm a regionalist. I do believe that if we spent more time at the regional level addressing the issues that come up at almost every housing about traffic, school children. So school children, we were fought in Woodstock on adding 34 children. Of course, now they're getting ready to close one or two of the elementary schools, and actually school children bring state aid, so we would have been a net add to the Woodstock School District. So I think if we could do things on a more regional perspective to get up and out of the character of the neighborhood, bring the business community to the table to emphasize, when you talk about farm workers, when you talk about workers here at Mohonk, it immediately puts an image in your head. So it's not those people, because Lord knows we don't want those people living next to us. But maybe a worker here at Mohonk is palatable. I don't know. Maybe someone who's working on a farm is palatable. And I heard Robert say it today too, and this takes political will. And I was really impressed with Jen's words today. I sent her a text. Might be the strongest words from an elected official. in a room at least half filled with land conservationists on affordable housing, and I know that we're all here together, and I appreciate that. But so strong leadership it has to be part of the mix as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for one more question. Yes. Yours.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was pointing over me. So, to sort of build on Deborah's question, social media changed the world for communication. Everything is out there in an instantaneous notice, including the rumors and the half facts and half truths. And so my question is, how do you, and maybe Ken, you can answer this because you did this going through projects, how do you beat the lies or the half-truths that are out there that people believe it because they read it on the internet? And as an elected official, we spend, I know Neil probably does too, we spend half our time answering phone calls because somebody read something on Facebook or Nextdoor and trying to counter that. So how is it, from your side, how do you help partner to counter that?
I have an answer, but I can't empathize with you because I'm not an elected official, and I can understand. I understand the problem. I'm not. I don't tweet. I don't twit. I'm not LinkedIn, and I never book my face. So I'm not on. I'm not on. I don't even read the comments of the newspapers. I think again. I go back to. I think we're able to, at this point, point to some positive examples, all right? Point to some positive examples and point and ask them to call the supervisor of this town. And that shuts it down. It does. And I'll leave you with this story. Linda's here, Linda Cooper. So I did my first big affordable housing project with Linda in the town of Yorktown, and she had the courage to do it. And this group, where we were in a hamlet, and they came out against us. And they had one lady who was very, very talented, very smart, very organized, very talented. And I tried to meet with her, and she says, I'm stopping you. I don't want this here. I want a Starbucks next door. I want really cool yuppies moving in here. I don't want this. And I said, all right, well, listen, I'm not going anywhere. And so we went forward. We were approved. She sued. She lost. She went to appeal it. She actually called the Commissioner of Housing and said, don't fund this because we're going to win the appeal. And she kept going and going. But, moral to the story, the first day we show up, this one I used to be hands-on in construction. I'm out directing traffic because we're unloading a backhoe, all right, to start clearing the property. And with that, I'm stopping traffic. And she's 2 or 3 cars back. She gets out of the car and starts running up the street to me. Ken, I got to talk to you. I go, I can't talk to you. And she goes, no, I have to talk to you. I said, please, I can't talk to you. She goes, Ken, my aunt needs an apartment. Now, it's been 22 years. We haven't got to her number yet. But the point is that I think, I would think that after the project, her mindset has changed. And I think others have as well. When I went to work in Somers, the supervisor called Yorktown and said, tell me about this guy. Tell me about him. Is he around? Does he own what he does? So I think for an elected official, what you have to do is you have to be able to have that. Ask the developer, who can we call to verify that you are who you say you are? I think that's important.
Thank you. We have time for one more question in the back.
Yeah, I guess this is also for Ken. Spoke about the passion and dedication required for development. Is there anything that towns can do to, I don't know, motivate besides just financially, anything else to get these good developers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was talking to Michelle earlier from Hudson, and we just submitted a tax credit application for a project in Hudson. And I looked at Michelle, and we had a meeting recently with the mayor. And you sit down across from the mayor, and you feel his passion. And he wants this for all the right reasons. And I got up from the table, and Sean and I were driving back from Hudson. I said, I really want to work there. I really want to work there, and I really want to work with him because he was passionate about it. It came across. He wasn't doing it to just put points on the board. So I think if you're a municipality, and if you want it, yes, and there's things you have to do, or there's other problems we can solve as we're talking about today. Open space, extended sewer lines. But be passionate about it. Let the developer know that you're passionate, and it puts, I mean, in my case, I suffer from the Irish Guilds anyway, but it puts that pressure on you, self-pressure, to not let down that elected official. And I think it goes a long way for any municipality.
I want to thank our panel. Great thought-provoking questions. Comments?